Twitch streaming right now is this whole meta around short form clipping. And that live stream has 300,000 CCVs. But then the interesting thing now is like all these kids are clipping it across TikTok and YouTube Shorts and Instagram. And so you go from 300,000 CCVs on Twitch to 30 million additional organic views just through clipping. And I think that's a reason why like Kai's become so prominent, is like the internet just has embraced the clipping atmosphere of Kai to where like he obviously thinks about it. He's like, what are the clippable moments that like we can make? And it's like, you know, where the word clip farming came from.
Yeah.
And so,
well, Reed, thank you for not coming in. Thanks for
for hosting. Yeah.
Yeah, for hosting us here today. We are at the Night offices. It's I think you moved in here a year ago.
Yeah, a little over a year ago.
Okay.
Company started in Dallas, Texas. And then we migrated to Austin early on in the company.
Got it.
And then I think just through time, as the company started to grow and we went from 10 employees to 40 and 40 to 80, it seemed like everyone we were hiring was in California and mostly centered in Los Angeles. And so about a year ago, you know, I started moving my stuff out. Everyone else that was in Austin slowly started to migrate to LA. And we moved into this office, which is about 16,000 square feet. We have about 60 to 65 people that office out of here. The rest are in New York, some in Atlanta. But yeah, this is what like our central headquarters, I guess. Yeah.
Because I remember you were kind of moving back and forth between Austin and LA, and so I guess this is a little bit more permanent.
This is more permanent. I have my office here.
Nice.
I don't know what life for Night would be like without an office now. I think once you get accustomed to being in an office and seeing faces every single day, it's hard to think about going back to work from home. And especially when you have a services business like us, and now there's 80 full-time people, it's you get so much benefit out of being in person.
Right. And
I missed it. We had an office in Dallas when we were really small, and so like finally getting back and having all these people in here, it's like nice to walk in every morning.
Got it. So for some of the listeners who don't know, can you just give a quick introduction about yourself and about Night? Yeah.
So Night is a talent management company that I started 10 years ago. I was NFL, so football, not soccer. So with a oval ball, so American football agent early on in my career. And then when I started to kind of research on the internet in 2013, I was stumbling upon this site called YouTube. And early on within the YouTube days, there's this creator named Dude Perfect who were really making trick shots. And I'm sure that their videos are probably popular in Japan because for most of their old videos, they don't speak. It's just, it's a music video basically of trick shots. And so I found these videos in 2013 when I was working as a sports agent, became pretty obsessed just with what they were doing and what kind of business they were growing. And I ended up just sending them a cold email asking if I could connect with them. Long story short, you know, we ended up getting connected. I flew to Dallas to meet them, kind of found myself in a situation a couple months after that where I left that job that I had and I moved to Dallas, Texas to work with Dude Perfect. And then through that process of working with Dude Perfect, I started to realize that they were not going to be the last creator on YouTube to start to build some type of a media company or a production business. And so I took the leap in July of 2015 and started what has now become Night. And the company is really talent management at its core. We represent about 220 creators across TikTok, Twitch, and YouTube. And we really like to focus on a pretty wide variety of verticals, like whether it's automotive or lifestyle or sports. We've done a good job of diversifying. And then through having that talent management company, we built a venture studio. And so that venture studio started to build companies with creators. The one that is the most notable is called Feastables. And it's a consumer snacks brand that we built with MrBeast. We're not in Japan yet. That's an ongoing conversation. We're in every 7-Eleven in America and a lot of them in Mexico. And so I would imagine within the next 12 months, people will start to see them pop up in 7-Elevens in Japan. And so that's a business that we started with him. And then we also
I tried some of the more recent flavors, the cookies and cream. I haven't tried the egg shaped peanut butter one yet. I've not tried that. I do have to try it. But the cookies and cream peanut butter ones, those are fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, it's a long story, but like we didn't start with that product. Right. I remember when you and I initially connected, it was probably three and a half years ago. and we had a different Feastables product, which was organic chocolate. Also, how did you get it in Japan?
I got it through an investor of Feastables. I had them send it to me. I think we were the first ones in Japan to hold it up on live stream and eat it.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
Because when we met, we had a long conversation about that. And then I appreciate you, like, you went and sent me a bunch of pictures from, like, what C-store chocolate sections look like, because at that time we were doing a lot of research on what countries we wanted to expand into first. And I was trying to understand what, individuals in Japan ate, what were the most popular chocolate brands.
Right.
And so through that process, we ended up switching the bar completely. New formulation, new branding. We went from organic Peruvian cocoa to conventional cocoa in Africa. And so just a lot of changes. And so now when you see Feastables, it's just this blue packaging. It's very consistent.
And this is still pretty new for Night as well, to be kind of involved this deeply into like the supply chains and everything. I remember, you had a video where you actually flew to Peru to kind of look at the chocolate factories and everything. So what's that process been like? And I'm assuming that's really helped you in kind of the next iteration, the next kind of creator brands that you guys are incubating.
Yeah, it's, when we started Feastables, we didn't really know anything about the chocolate space. Like, we were in a confections business that nobody in this office really had experience in. And so it was a lot of just learn on the fly and ask a lot of questions. And we ended up bringing in a CEO who was at RX Bar at the time. And, he ran the company for about 16 months and it got really big, really quick.
Right.
I think that's the one thing, with Feastables, it's like the company scaled. It's like we sold 4 million chocolate bars in the first, I think, 3 weeks of the company.
That's
and that
insane.
was all direct to consumer through
Right.
Feastables.com. We didn't even have retail yet. And then Walmart came along about 6 months later. But we had to learn quickly. And so it was just like I was trying to consume as much information as possible.
Right.
And in that process, I wanted to fly down to the manufacturers. I wanted to go meet with the cocoa distributors. I wanted to understand, the farm, how you have a cocoa tree and like how that fruit comes off of that, gets fermented and then sent to the distribution center. And so I really just kind of immersed myself along with a lot of people in this office into that. And through that process, we have a very deep understanding of consumer product brands. And it's not just chocolate. I think we studied a lot of different spaces within Feastables. We tested a cookie for a hot second. We looked at a lot of different things. And, we announced another product with Cenat and Phantom and Duke Dennis and all the guys at AMP.
Yep.
And that men's care business is called Tone. And I think we learned so much through Feastables that helped us get to where Tone is right now, and like have a retailer already lined up before you launch, and like how should you be manufacturing the products, and like what is the mechanism of shipping them, and what does the launch look like. And so it's just high learning curve. But I think that's the beauty of kind of everyone in this company is we're just really good at doing the work and figuring it out. And thankfully with Feastables, we made a lot of mistakes, I think, right out of the gate, but we were able to course correct them pretty quickly.
Right. But I think this is partially what differentiates Night from a lot of the so-called like creator incubation type firms, where you guys really go down deep on this and really work hand in hand with the creators. Because oftentimes the creators they have their content creation jobs, right, and so they can't focus full time on it. Having worked with a lot of creators and creator brands, what do you think are some of the most important factors in actually creating a brand that's successful for creators, instead of having, oftentimes it fizzles out in like a year or two?
I think the one thing you kind of nailed on was a creator is very good at creating content, being that production company, being a director, writer, producer. There's a very big difference between producing your own content and then running a consumer products business.
Right.
And so I think a lot of times the creator tries to think that they can also run their own consumer product business, and they just don't hire the right people.
Right.
And it takes a village for these things to be successful.
Yes.
And that's one thing that we had to learn. The really hard truth within Feastables is we didn't have a commercialization team. We didn't have a product quality and standard team. We didn't have a packaging architect, which we didn't even know what that was when we started. And then I can't remember who brought it up on a phone call, and they were like, "Oh, well, who did your packaging design? Who's your packaging architect?"
Right.
And I was like, "What is that?" And so we didn't even know that we needed a team to be thinking about packaging and packaging design.
Right.
And so I think a lot of these creators, they're very like hyper obsessed with what they do for a living, which is make YouTube videos or TikToks. And they're a lot of times very good at that. it's a completely different muscle to be able to jump into a different realm and be successful.
Right.
I think it's like the same could be said for someone who's very good at making TikToks now also wants to be an actor or an actress. You have to go take acting lessons. You have to make it your craft. And so I think just one thing that we've been really good at is like getting smart on something really quickly and then being able to find the right people to put in place to help a company be successful. And a lot of creator brands, like they don't really put those things together. And you just said like they'll launch it, they'll see a high wave, a spike of revenue in the first like month, and then they won't know what to do from there because they haven't hired a proper marketing team. They don't have a proper like retargeting paid social team that's like actually understanding this, or even someone that understands retail and like how are you playing consistently in Walmart and where should you be in store, and like there's so many little nuances to running these businesses. And there's, again, same thing with YouTube, there's so many little nuances to be a successful YouTuber. And a lot of times like creators, they're very good at one thing, and that's making YouTube videos. And I think the one thing that we've done really well is like we've hired great people to work on these companies.
Makes sense. I wanted to get your thoughts on both on the creator brand side and on YouTube and content creation of this idea of a group or collective. And I think Dude Perfect kind of started this, but I think there are a specific type of group where it's internal, right? It's a group of friends coming together versus, things like Tone or the Sidemen, where it's a group of individual creators coming together. Oftentimes they're friends, but they each have kind of individual creator jobs while they actually form a group. And do you think this actually helps with some of the longevity of a brand like Tone, instead of being very focused on one individual person?
Yeah. I think the one thing with Tone is there's 6 members. And so some guys are better at certain things than others. Right. And so, we're able to lean on, different individuals for what we actually need to get done. It's not 100% of the stress on one individual, which is, it's very hard as a creator. You're already stressed about your videos and your production company. Now you have to worry about this consumer product business. When you kind of spread it out across multiple creators, and we've done this with another company that we have called Block Snacks. And so we do fruit snacks in Albertsons and Walmart and Target. And it's multiple creators. It's not just on one singular person. And I think what we've learned is like, you want to spread out and actually like give creators the ability to do things that they're good at. And also like, you don't want that one singular fail point to be on one creator, because you never know what's going to happen or where they want to pivot their career. And so I think, we do think that's a benefit in an example of Tone, or in, for the Sidemen, they have sides, their restaurant, they have a cereal business. It's much easier when it's not just all on KSI. It's like there's a bunch of guys that are collectively promoting this thing. And then you also have the individual channels of the people, like in the Sidemen case, and then you have the group channel of the Sidemen, and they're able to promote stuff across all those different channels. Right.
And I'm assuming, obviously very long-term, exit, creators, obviously they don't last forever in terms of, someday they're going to stop creating content. A group seems to be easier to kind of bring in new members as well. And so like, I always imagine kind of the success case of creator brands to be something like a Nike or like a Gatorade, where you have the brand, but you have this kind of group of a cast member, right, of athletes and ambassadors.
Yeah, I think Skims is a good example.
That's a great one.
Started with Kim Kardashian. She did an amazing job of getting the company to where it is today.
Right.
And now everything that Skims does doesn't even involve her. Right. It's like, we had a client that was in a Skims campaign recently. They're kind of spreading this out through celebrities and creators. They just did a Nike collab. So I think that the smartest way to think about it is the celebrity creator is the launching point. They're the one that gives it the initial marketing push, the initial ability for everyone to hear about it and awareness. But like the success of the company is then really predicated on like, what do you do after that? Because you're getting a lot of attention from Kim Kardashian. The product obviously has to be great. The go-to-market strategy has to be really good. But then it's like, what do you do after Kim gives it that initial lift of maybe it's like the first 18 months, it's all on her. And I think Skims has done that so masterfully now, just like pivoting into where they are, which is like they're just a women's lifestyle business that now just launched, men's underwear and men's different clothing and then bringing people in. So
and now partner with Nike as well.
Yeah, and the Nike partnership. So I just think they've done a great job.
Do you think it's, there's a similar kind of issue around like creators with content as well? Like, do you think more creators will form groups or is that a little bit different because content creators are more just focused on kind of their own content?
There's a lot of examples on both sides, right? Like Dude Perfect was a group. There's a lot of scenarios where it's benefited people to be in the group. And if you just like think 3 years ago, being in the Dream S&P Minecraft server was not only a cosign of, oh, this person's in our club. It was, hundreds of thousands of fans that would then rush to that person to be like, oh my God. Yeah. And so like that platform existed to put people on and to give them an audience. I think FaZe is another good example of, FaZe has a built-in audience. They can bring someone in and they can make them popular overnight just because of the platform that they have. But I do think that's pretty few and far between. A lot of times, like even the majority of the creators we represent, it's just a single individual that has an editor, a videographer, a thumbnail artist, and that's the business. I think that is more in line with what the future looks like. Gaming has just always been a unique one. I don't know what it is, but gaming is filled with content orgs and OTK and offline TV and FaZe Clan and Optic. And so that has always been just really siloed in gaming.
Do you think that's because there's a multiplayer aspect to gaming?
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of reasons. I think esports played a big role in this. Esports teams early on, like Optic and FaZe, had these individuals who were already making content. And so they came together as an esports organization to either play competitive Call of Duty or to do whatever. And then that spawned off into content creation. And so I think that's why it became pretty prominent. Also, like, COD is multiplayer. And like some of these things early in the day, like people would play Minecraft with their friends. I think if you're a creator that mows lawns, it's like hard to think what a content organization would look like because usually one person's mowing the lawn, right? Or if you're an outdoor channel like Outdoor Boys and you travel across the country in Alaska and you're like camping outside, it's hard to think through like having other people involved in that business. And so, I think that in gaming it existed because of those aspects, but the future to me of content creation, I don't think we're going to go back to content houses like Hype House and all these things. Like I think we're slowly moving away from that.
Got it. And because we're here at Night, we have to talk about live streaming a little bit, have to talk about Kai. And I think he kind of represents a new generation of this idea of content creation. I think it feels almost kind of TV-esque in a way, like kind of live events, big events that like you have to come and watch. And do you think this is partially because there's been such a proliferation of like YouTube and TikTok content that it's really hard to get kind of attention and trust into one single moment? And so being focused on whether it's a 30-day event, a week-long event, that essentially concentrates a lot of eyeballs.
We see it on both sides though. Like, we also represent Hassan Piker and Asmongold. And they're streaming every day. Like I was just checked my PC before we went live. Like Hassan was streaming to 45,000 people. He's live 5 days a week. And so there is a lot of Twitch streamers that benefit from the consistency of always being live. The other side of the coin that we've seen with Kai and some of these other individuals that we represent is they can focus more on the spectacle of the moment. And so I'm going to do a live stream Tuesday at 7 o'clock Eastern time, and we're going to be doing this. And Kevin Hart's going to be spending the night. Before Kai started doing that, that wasn't really the thought process of Twitch streamers. The thought process was consistency matters, always be live. The more live hours you have, the better you're going to be off. People like XQC were streaming 150 hours a month. And then I think Kai comes along and he starts to do these one-off events. And we started to see this a little bit during the Dream S&P days where they would schedule Dream S&P like playthroughs or whatever on the server. and it was like Tommy in it would be like, I'm going live at 6 o'clock, and they would play through an hour and a half episode of the Dream S&P. We started to see it then. Kai just kind of took it to the next level of eventizing Twitch. And it's a talk show that only happens 2 to 3 times a week, but when it does, everybody shows up.
Yeah. I mean, him and Speed, I think, were part of the 2 front runners here.
Speed, same way. It's just his involves traveling around the country. Yeah, I just saw he was in what was the brand? He was just in a commercial in China for some product that now I can't remember.
I wonder if it's like a Huawei or something.
It wasn't technology. It was a consumer product. I want to say it was like a lemon juice or something. Anyway, it's funny that like he travels around the country now, and like China has embraced him a lot. And also Kai too. Kai did a lot of travel streams. I mean, he met Ray in Tokyo.
Right.
So I want to say this is going to continue to be a trend, but I still see the fact that like I log into Twitch multiple times a day, and the same people are live every single day, whether it's like Queso or Jinxie.
Right.
Like they are putting in a significant amount of hours. And so I don't think a lot of people are trying to chase Kai and eventizing days, nights around Twitch. Like I do think it's very challenging to continually one up what you're trying to do.
Right. But it does feel like the more, consistent live streaming is essentially the next generation of radio. And then the spectacle side is more TV, right? And then it's kind of like TV, you have to kind of watch you have to watch Game of Thrones every week, right? So it feels kind of like that, but it's kind of to the next level.
We think podcasts too. Everyone's always like, why doesn't Kai have a podcast?
Yeah.
No, he does have a podcast. It's called his Twitch stream.
Right.
Like the amount of sheer clips that come out of Kai's live stream is his podcast. And that's the other interesting thing about Twitch streaming right now is this whole meta around short form clipping. Kai could do a live stream where him and John Cena are trying his Big Mac for McDonald's.
Right.
And that live stream has 300,000 CCVs. But then the interesting thing now is like all these kids are clipping it across TikTok and YouTube Shorts and Instagram. And so you go from 300,000 CCVs on Twitch to 30 million additional organic views just through clipping. And I think that's a reason why like Kai's become so prominent is like the internet just has embraced the clipping atmosphere of Kai to where like he obviously thinks about it. He's like, what are the clippable moments that like we can make? And it's like, where the word clip farming came from. And so.
Well, I do want to get to podcasting, but I want to kind of deep dive onto the point you just made. Do you think it's easier than, for live streamers or, traditional kind of YouTubers who create more long form content to go to do that plus short form, because oftentimes it gets cut up and it gets on the internet versus short form first going long form? Because we've seen a very few creators, maybe like Alan Chicken Show,
go from short to long.
Yeah,
I think going from short to long is much more difficult because when you're a short form creator, you're not thinking about the thumbnail. You're not usually thinking about the idea as deeply. You're filming something and then you're putting it out there.
Right.
When you're making YouTube videos, hopefully before you film the video, you know what the thumbnail is, you know what the title is, you have a broad idea of the storyline, and then you're going and filming it, and then now you have to worry about editing and the execution of that edit. So there's a lot more variables to worry about in long form. I think if you've mastered the long form, you already understand retention, you understand idea generation. And so it's much easier to go from I'm an amazing long form creator to like I need to make good short form content. But I do think they're completely different in how you execute them. And I haven't seen a lot of great examples of a really good short form creator jumping into long form videos and having a lot of success.
Got it. I do want to touch into podcasting a little bit. I know we're running out of time. Night acquired a podcasting network, Rooster.
It was Rooster Teeth was a media company that owned a lot of different YouTube channels, and then Rooster Teeth started a podcast network called The Roost, and then we acquired The Roost a little over a year ago, actually, from Warner Brothers.
And what was kind of the thought process there? How does that kind of integrate with Night?
Yeah, I wanted The Roost a long time ago. The complication with it was Warner Brothers owned it. They didn't want to sell it.
Right.
But it was an asset that I had always been interested in just because I thought that it fit. One, the talent fit within the management company of Night, and then my whole like philosophy around it was that how advertisers buy podcasts, which is like usually like a direct response agency will go in and they'll buy 30 to 40, 50-second slots within a podcast. It's happening more and more on YouTube. And so I'm like 5 years in the future, is the majority of buying on YouTube and Twitch and even in the podcast space all the same? Is it just like buying ad inventory and media inventory? And so does having a podcast network give us an upper leg on that, because we're going to have an ad sales team that's used to selling media? And so that was thought number one. And then thought number two, when Warner Brothers decided to shut down Rooster Teeth and the Roost came up for sale, and like we jumped on it and moved it was like a 4-day process.
Right.
We had to dive into the data room and make an offer. We got the data on Tuesday night, and we had to have our offer submitted by Friday at noon.
Wow.
That's how quick this like thing was. And then in the process, we didn't even know how many other people were bidding. Like the investment bank wasn't giving us any info. And so thankfully, like my president here, Ezra, started the Roost when he was the president of Rooster Teeth. And so we had a little bit of an upper hand, is that we knew a lot of the employees. And yeah, we made an offer. We ended up acquiring it. And I think the talent was also really interesting to us. And one of them being Theo Vaughn, who we just finished a film with called Busboys. And it was him and David Spade and a lot of other actors that you guys will see when the movie comes out. And so I think it was also really interesting for us to also be in the Theo business. And so it was a little bit of an acquisition around, we want to be stronger on the ad sales team. We really like the talent inside of the Roost, and we think the Theo business is also an interesting area where we just want to play. So,
last two questions. So, one, where's Night kind of headed? Because oftentimes I think with a talent management company, you usually grow through acquiring more talent, right? And maybe that's acquiring other talent management agencies. But I think you've taken a slightly different route where you're doing that, but you're also doing incubations. You're doing all these other different things. What's kind of the future for Night?
Yeah, we're just inherently like very entrepreneurial in nature. I think the one differentiating factor between us and a lot of the other management companies is like we do have a very successful venture studio. Whether that's companies like Feastables or Block Snacks or Tone, or things like Outtake in the AI space that just raised a big Series A, like that was incubated here. It's like we've built a lot of businesses now, and the venture studio model for us is working. It's taken us a long time to get here. We've made so many mistakes in the venture studio, but it's like, we're business builders that just also happen to like do the management thing very, very, very well. And so we have always kind of said like the company that really understands the internet better than anyone in the world is really set up for success for the future. And so I think the next 5 years is like we're going to continue to double down on internet, on digital creators, on building businesses. And it's like when you're in the talent space and talent is kind of your wedge into everything else, like opportunities just kind of fall in your lap. And I think we've also done a good job of just being nimble and doing things like, hey, the Roost is for sale. It's Tuesday night.
Right.
Do we actually want to do this deal? We need to get it done in 3 days. And we've done 3 other acquisitions outside of the Roost. And so we've made a lot of good strategic plays, but we've also just been very smart about our growth. Like, I don't think that we ever thought Night was going to look like a hockey stick. Like when I started this company, I didn't think it was going to be a venture scale business.
Right.
I thought it was going to grow very linear. And I was hoping, 10 years ago, it was something that I could do for a long period of time. And so it feels like we're still so early in the life cycle of what this company is. I think the internet changes so much every single day that it's like, it's hard for me to look at a crystal ball and be like, what do we look like 5 years in the future? I think we're just trying to continue to be who we are, which is like young, hungry, internet obsessed company, this like, pirate ship that lives off the coast of LA that's like not in Hollywood. I mean, you're in our office, like we're in Santa Monica.
Right.
We're not part of Hollywood.
Right.
It was like never the thesis of the company. Like I didn't want to be a traditional talent management company. I think YouTube wins over the next 10 years. I want to be a part of that. And so that's our focus.
Got it. Last question. You can take this in a good way or a bad way, whichever side you want. What keeps you up at night?
Man, a lot of things. I think what keeps me up at night is how do we continually hire the best people? I think that over long periods of time, the best companies in the world do a very good job at hiring and training the best people.
Right.
And so I think the one thing that doesn't necessarily keep me up at night. I think it's the one thing that's always in the back of my mind that I just can't get out, is that I always just want to be hiring the best people possible. And a lot of times, like, the role of the CEO is like, yes, vision, where are we headed as a company? How are we making people successful in this door, like capital allocation. But I spend a lot of time kind of thinking about, like, how do we just continue to get the best people? And then my role in that is, like, when we find amazing people, it's my job to be the salesman of why they should actually come work at this business. And I think we've done an incredibly good job of continuing to get great people in the door. That's the one thing that I think keeps me up at night. I don't really lose a lot of sleep over the internet things. Like, I feel like the internet changes so quickly. Right. And if that stresses you out, that, like, you always have to stay up to date. Like Kevin, who's standing here filming right now, it's like, he kind of knows, like, we do a nightlight, we do a newsletter every single week. And a lot of times there's, like, so many different platform changes and social platforms and, like, things that pop up. It just feels like the world moves so fast, and that used to stress me out. And I'm like, how am I going to continue to, like, stay in the know? But I think, like, now I have, all these people in here who, I'd say the average age of a Night employee is maybe like 26. Wow. So it's like, we're a pretty young business. And yeah, that doesn't keep me up anymore. It's definitely the people thing.
Got it. Sorry, one last question. What was your favorite thing about Japan when you came to visit?
Favorite thing about Japan,
or the thing that surprised you about Japan?
Okay.
I'm sure there's a lot, but
yeah, I think, okay, there's a few things. One is, like, the obvious thing that, you guys kind of brought me a bag of goodies, which I appreciate that. I did not expect, like, I'm very much America has the best candy in the world.
Yep.
Like, I was banging that drum my whole life, is like, we have the best candy. And then when I went to Japan, I think when I was with you, you sent me a box of candy.
I sent you one, but then remember when you came to Japan, we had a little gummy war where Mickey, my podcast co-host, she brought you a bunch of gummies to test.
I bought everything. Yeah. We literally tried everything, and I was so pleasantly surprised. And the candy could not be more. It's so different. I think the fillings are different. The, like, pectin. I think it's pectin. I don't think it's gelatin that you guys use in your products. Also, I don't know what it is, but, like, candy doesn't make me feel as, like, bogged down. Like, when you eat a bag of trolley gummy worms, like I do all the time, like, you have, like, high blood sugar and you just don't feel great. In Japan, like, I would rip through a whole, like, bag of candy, and I never felt that. Yep. And so I think they feel more clean. They feel cleaner in how they're made. So that was one. I think the other one is, I was just pleasantly surprised around just business culture. And this is something that, you kind of helped me think through, is, like, how do you greet someone? Like, what is the respected way to bring up something in a meeting? Right. I didn't really understand the situation around, the most important person sits the furthest away from the door. Right. And so, like, learning all those different things as we were meeting with Nissan and Toyota. And so in America, there's just not these, like, customs that happen around business. And so I think that was the other thing that I was, like, pleasantly surprised by, is just, like, how nice everyone was, how welcoming all the companies were to meet with me and, like, hear, what we were working on. And then the last thing that I'll say about Japan that I was pretty surprised with, YouTube is very underdeveloped. There's not a lot of creators. Yep. There's some really big creators, but they're not known outside of Japan. And I think that's tough. It's like, Japanese is only spoke inside the country. Yes. And so if you're a Japanese creator, it's really hard to gain viewership outside of Japan. And, I spoke at that conference, and it was mostly creators in there. And I didn't recognize anyone. And, I think it is still, like, so early in the digital creator world in Japan. And so I'm curious to see, like, how this evolves over the next 10 years. But it does feel like there's so much room to grow in the country.
Definitely. Well, Reed, thank you for your time today, and hopefully you come back to Japan soon.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me.